Welcome to the 2-Acre Homestead. Come along with us on our journey from a small, suburban homestead lifestyle
to our new lifestyle, homesteading in the rural countryside of southern Arizona.
We'll share with you our tips, tricks, successes, and failures.
From both our past suburban lifestyle to our new rural lifestyle,
all on the 2-Acre Homestead. Nathalie, welcome to the show. We are super excited to have you. And for those of you who do not know, we are welcoming Nathalie from Living the Dream Permaculture. Welcome to the 2-Acre Homestead. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well. How are you guys?
Good. Well, in case you did not know, Nathalie is from Australia. So from my vantage point here in the United States, she's half a world away. And so am I from her vantage point. But Nathalie, we wanted to welcome you to the show because, you know, you have been in the space of homesteading, permaculture, and also being a homesteading mom for quite some time. And yeah, you have. And you have a beautiful family. And if you guys give yourselves an opportunity, go over there to YouTube, check Nathalie out. She has a wonderful, wonderful YouTube channel, wonderful family. Go out there and check her out. But we'll tell you guys about that more later in the show. But we are welcoming Nathalie because we're talking all about homesteading with children this season. And today's discussion is going to be all about homesteading and homeschooling and how to strike the balance between the two. Because homesteading can be all consuming just in and of itself. Take it from me.
That's
I
right.
used to homestead without kids. It can be consuming without kids, but then you throw them in the mix and that's a whole different ball game. What do you think, Nathalie?
It is, but I was a young mum, so I've always had kids in and around my feet. And we started growing fairly early on in our marriage. Growing food in our urban backyard. And so I've always had a little person there pulling things out while I'm trying to grow. So it is a balance, but as you add more and more kids, like being a mum without a farm, you're usually adding one by one. And so you're learning to juggle slowly. And so that's just how it's been, I guess. Yeah.
I've heard the expression your mom muscle, your parenting muscle, and just eventually you just grow and you just grow with them. And they say it gets easier and easier. Mine are still pretty little. We're in the trenches still. So, we're just getting out of potty training. So fun stuff.
And those early years are really difficult. I remember when I had babies, each time we added a baby and still having a garden. It was an urban garden, but still we had a fairly decent space to grow in. But each time that I was newly pregnant and feeling sick or, having a new baby, that garden was pushed to the side and we didn't focus as much energy on it as we would when we were out of that season. So I found the first year quite difficult. Yes, there are nap times that you could garden in, but those are precious to do other things in. And then they start moving around and, our first garden was in our front yard. And so, you got to keep your eye on your kids because you don't want them crawling onto the footpath or the street, even though it is a, dead end road. It's not ideal. So, it was still a juggle for, the first couple of years of their life when they became a little bit more self-sufficient in their needs, taking care of their needs. They could play by themselves independently. But you still are focused on where your kid is and what they're doing.
You're keeping your head on a swivel.
Yeah, that's right. where my kids are at an age now, and they have been for a few years, where I can go into the garden, they know where I am, and they can kind of self-entertain or come down, hang out with me. and I don't have to be too worried about what they're getting up to.
Yeah.
It also helps that we're on the farm now, so I know that, you know, they're safe and they know where they can go on the farm and where they can't go without asking. So that helps.
Yeah. I'm still at the stage where my kids are pulling things out. It's so funny, you know, every year is a different thing, you know. So this gardening year was all about the carrots. Last year was all about cucumbers. I couldn't grow enough cucumbers.
Yeah.
This year it was all about the carrots, and they would just like hop into the garden on their own and start pulling out carrots. And I was like, part of me was like, yeah, you know, I felt like, yeah, you know, this is great. Look, my kids, they know where food comes from. And I'm like, but wait a minute. I'm trying to preserve those for winter. Can we lay off the carrots for a little bit?
Yeah. And there is a lesson in that, like what you can pick and when. Yes, there are fruit on the tree, but you can't pick the peach if it's still green.
Right.
Or yes, the flowers are beautiful, the blossoms are beautiful on the tree, but if you take them off, you're taking a piece of fruit off. And so that's where the lessons have been coming in, you know, please don't pick the oranges if they're green because they're not going to be any good.
My head, yes.
It was really funny when we got our current dog. He's an English Staffy, and all of a sudden I found all these carrots on my front lawn, and I said to the kids, who's been pulling out carrots and eating half of it and leaving it on the ground? Do you know how hard it is to grow carrots? They're like, it wasn't us. I'm like, okay, well, someone did.
Yeah, who did it?
And then we later found the dog pulling out carrots. So it's not just children.
It's not just the kids. It's the dog too.
No. Yeah.
Oh, how funny. Well, if you could, Nathalie, let the audience know just a little bit about like where I know I already said that you're in Australia, but I mean, like how big is your farm? What got you started? Actually, really, what got you started living this lifestyle? Because, you know, we're all so different.
Yeah, that's right. So,
you know, we like to grow our own food. Oh my goodness, we're so weird.
I met my husband when I was 19 and he was 22. And early on in the relationship, we started talking about what we want in our future. And so my husband grew up on a farm, a hobby farm in Western Australia, which is on the other side of Australia to where I am now. And they had 20 acres or thereabouts. And his dad was a permie. And he just said he would really like to live on a farm. So our kids or, you know, his kids could have the space to just run around and have that freedom. And I was like, yeah, I really like that. You know, my uncle had a 10-acre farm, loved going there, loved hanging out with the animals. I was the youngest by about 10 years with all the cousins and my siblings. So I had no one to hang out with other than the animals. So I loved that. And we were dating for 9 months, got engaged, got married after another 9 months. And then we went on a honeymoon around Australia. And we were able to stop in to his best mate over there. And they had, I believe it was 200 acres in the wheat belt, so grain producing area of Western Australia, quite far away from a town. And so they had to be self-sufficient for no other reason other than being so far away from the supermarket. And so they had a massive veggie patch. They raised their own animals. I was 21. I think I'd maybe just turned 22 at this stage. And I remember my husband saying to me before we got there, he's like, so we're going to be eating animals that they raised on the farm. And I'm like, I won't eat an animal that I've met. So that was who I used to be.
Yeah.
And anyway, we spent a couple of weeks there and he gave me some really hard truths about modern agriculture and what large farms and corporations do to our food. And that was a massive wake-up call because I never had to think about that before in my life. And he really inspired me to start the self-learning process. And so we were a couple of months away from coming home. And when we came home, we were lucky that we purchased a house before we left. rented it out, came back to our home, and I started researching and started growing we had a third of an acre, but it was very steep, western facing, which isn't ideal in my the location. So because we're in the southern hemisphere, we need to face north, and we were facing west on the downward slope. Lots of gum trees. Gum trees suck up all the water from the soil. And it was hard, but I learned a lot of things, and it wasn't really about growing food to be self-sufficient. It was just giving it a go.
It was the journey.
It was. And so we had this dream of buying a farm, but we were still young, didn't have the funds. Properties are very expensive where I live. I live in Victoria, which is on the southern part of mainland Australia. And we have a cool temperate climate. So we can grow through winter, but it's better to grow through spring, summer and autumn. Anyway, we ended up selling that after a couple of years and moved to another urban property that was 720 square meters from memory. We grew in the front yard, had an orchard at the back, had some chooks. We had 2 babies there. So I had 1 baby at the old house and 2 babies at this urban house. And this house was one to renovate so we could sell it and fund the farm. And we did that after 6 years. We sold it. We had some really bad neighbors that really got us, got our butt into gear and got us to sell.
That's what
really
bad neighbors are good for.
It was fantastic because we moved in 2018, mid-2018, and it gave us a year and a bit to set up before what was to happen in 2020. And no one was going to know that. But 2020 changed a lot of things for a lot of people, and also made the housing market unaffordable, or buying a farm unaffordable for so many people. So we're really lucky that we got to move to our farm, and that is 54 acres in West Gippsland, Victoria, Australia. We are cool temperate, but we do border on subalpine as well at times. We have behind me, we have Mount Baw Baw, which gets snow generally 9 months of the year. You can see some snow there on and off.
Nice.
This year we haven't had much snow, but yeah, that's a bit about our journey to getting here. And we raise, all our own livestock. We have chickens for eggs, chickens for meat. We just bought turkeys. We have ducks, geese, pigs, sheep, a milking cow, soon to be 2 milking cows, and a beef herd as well, which we run between our property and our neighbour's property. So we have about 100 acres, which we run them on. Nice.
And, if we can just go backwards here in something that you had said, because I know a lot of our listeners here are in the suburbs, and, I feel for them too, because we came from we came from suburbia and, moved out, into the rural area here in Southern Arizona. And the timing was perfect for us to do that. But not everybody, unfortunately, has that, that fortunate circumstance of moving. But, one of the things that we really encourage here on our on our podcast is to start homesteading where you are. Start your journey wherever you are. Try to be as, self-sufficient, providing for your own food. It doesn't matter if you're in the city, if you're just having to do this on a balcony, or if you've got acreage, if you're a small acreage holding like we are, or if a larger acreage holding like you are, do what you can where you are. And it's something that I really... I was just going to say, that's something I really appreciate about what you were explaining about yourself, is that you got started right where you were. And this is a wonderful example of somebody who started where they are and now look at the end result of where you are today. So hopefully that gives some inspiration to people.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you looking to build a homestead from the ground up? Or maybe you're looking to build an off-grid dream home, a vacation home, or maybe just a piece of land to call your own. Visit yourcheapland.com to buy rural land in the wide open spaces of southwestern United States. When you visit yourcheapland.com, they're here to help you, and with their help, you can do this. You can take your dream of owning land and make it a reality. Most down payments are only $294, including the document fee. Remember, everyone qualifies for financing at yourcheapland.com. Head on over to yourcheapland.com and start making those dreams come true. And now, back to our podcast.
I wouldn't have been able to come here and start growing food without that prior knowledge. And so in suburbia, I grew food, I made mistakes, but I also learned a lot of techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have these dreams and these ideals. I want to move to a farm. I want to be self-sufficient. I want to grow my own food and wear long flowy dresses. That's all fantastic. But if you don't have a skill set behind you, that's going to be a really difficult dream to fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
And it still is difficult. It wasn't an easy process. I mean, there were still lessons to be learnt. I've never had large livestock before. My husband had sheep growing up, but that was it. We'd never had pigs or cattle. We had chickens in suburbia. But if I was to start my first garden here, I would have been severely disappointed. And I probably wouldn't have had the resilience to keep going to be where I am now, even though it is only five and a bit years later.
Mm-hmm.
We are living off the land and we are feeding ourselves from what we are growing. And yeah, you start where you're at. If it's in a pot, grow in a pot. If it's in a tiny, little raised bed that's 1 meter by, half a meter, fantastic. You're going to have some skills to take with you for when you do move.
Yeah, because that's really a part of what the journey is just progressively picking up those skills, because in reality, it's taken you time to learn how to be dependent on the air quotes system where things are provided for you. You go to the grocery store, right. It's taken you time to learn that. So it's going to take you time to learn how to provide for yourself. And
and unlearn that.
Huh? And yes, and
unlearn that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I was reliant on, I grew up in suburbia and I moved here. I was 31, 32, somewhere around there. So I had 31, 32 years of going to the supermarket and buying whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. If I wanted strawberries in winter, not a problem. If I wanted tomatoes or zucchini in winter, go for it. They're all there. We have them grown in Queensland. Their growing season is the opposite of ours. Perfect. I can eat what I want when I want. When you're being self-sufficient, you really need to learn that strawberries are only a couple of months, if that, if you want strawberries in winter, you better preserve them. If you want to eat zucchinis in winter, preserve them. And so we've learnt this seasonal dance of what we can eat when we can eat, which was probably the biggest learning curve. And we did that. We started a challenge. We challenged ourselves spring of 2019. Spring for us is September. I challenged our family to living for a year, only eating what we can grow, forage, barter for, or purchase with the funds we made from selling our excess produce. And that was when I learned how to truly eat seasonally. I didn't prepare for this challenge. I gave myself 2 weeks to prepare. My pantry wasn't full. My pantry is full compared to others, but I didn't buy things just so I could get through a year. But, I had some cauliflowers growing in the garden. They take, 6 to 9 months to grow.
Yeah, they do.
From seed. But, I had to be resourceful. So, yes, you eat the cauliflower, but cauliflower leaves are really delicious. Not something that's usually eaten, but it was learning how to make do with what you've got, being resourceful and creative. And that was probably the biggest learning curve. Yes, I knew how to grow food. I learned how to grow from seed when we moved. But when we did the challenge of really being restrictive, essentially, and only eating what we can produce, I learned what it was like to be truly self-sufficient. And we aren't truly self-sufficient. I still buy flour and salt and sugar and olive oil. But we learned how to make do with what we could grow. And if we could only eat what we could grow, we could make do with that because we have those skills behind us.
Yeah. And how did your kids, I have to, spoiler alert, I remember that challenge because I actually, audience, I'm not crazy, but I actually participated in that challenge for, I think I only could last like a month and a half at that point. I remember you doing that challenge and I was like, I think I'm going to try that too. And I did it, but I could only do it for a month and a half. So everybody look to Nathalie. She knows what she's doing. This is why we have her here.
I'm a special,
I can only last a month.
I'm a special type of crazy. So, there's not many of us that.
Oh no, you are crazy.
That crazy.
You are kind of crazy.
Before we moved, I was in a lot of pain. I was struggling to bend over, to pick up the kids' toys. And so I pulled everything out of my pantry and we went on a paleo diet. So gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, basically meat, veg, and fats. And I was able to heal my body through that. And it was great. So I've already done a big diet overhaul, and the kids participated in that because I knew if there was chocolate in the house, I would eat it. I don't have any self-control. And so the kids were used to eating whole foods that they cooked from scratch. And so when we transitioned to that challenge, it wasn't very different to doing that paleo lifestyle overhaul when I was not feeling great. And they may do. We allowed our kids, birthdays, Easter, Christmas, our anniversary, our farmiversary, we would go and we would let the kids choose whatever they wanted from the supermarket. And so they would have a couple of times a year where they had unrestricted, eat what you want, pick it, So it wasn't like it was the year challenge, but we allowed the special occasions for them.
Wow. And how, switching gears, because we are supposed to be focusing on children and homeschooling and homesteading, how have your kids done with this transition of living from going from the suburban lifestyle to the rural lifestyle?
So my oldest son, he's probably the one who had the biggest shift because he was in suburbia. I think he was 7, 8 when we moved. And so he had lived in suburbia all his life. But we had chickens and we had the veggie patch and we had lots of open conversations about this isn't forever, we want to move to a farm. And so he came and looked at a lot of farms with us over a number of years as we were preparing. Around about the time that I had my daughter, who's my youngest, so he would have been 5 when she was born. So when I was heavily pregnant and then had just had her and was, expressing as well as breastfeeding because supply and, I had supply issues. So there was a lot of time expressing. A TV show came out in Australia called Gourmet Farmer. And I could probably liken that mostly for international listeners to River Cottage in the UK. I don't know if you guys have seen River Cottage. It's kind of like a reality, not really a reality show as in with the drama, but showing someone's move to a farm. This guy was a food critic in Sydney, moved to rural Tasmania, set up a farm, never farmed before. And so he was documenting that, 1 week would be getting a house cow, the other week would be getting chickens or growing the spring garden. And so we watched that series together. And don't know if it was series 1 or series 2, but it came to the point where he started butchering animals. And this one week was chickens. And I said to my oldest, how about we'll just skip this one? I think you're a little bit too young to watch it. So he's about 5. He's like, no, I really want to watch it. I'm like, I don't think it's appropriate. They're going to show the animal being killed. I don't know. I don't even know if I want to say that. He's like, no, I really, really, really want to see it. I was like, okay, fine. We'll watch it. If you don't like it at any stage, we'll turn it off. And he watched it. He was fascinated. And this is the kid that wouldn't eat chicken at 3 because he had a pet chicken. And so every time I called dinner chicken, he didn't want to eat it because he thought of his pet chicken. So I had to call it meat. So this is, this is where we've come from. No, he wanted to watch it. Fascinated. A year later, I was driving my middle child to kinder. They went to a school together. It was kinder to year 12. So kinder in Australia is from 3 years old. And year 12 is 17, 18-year-olds. So last year of high school. And so, driving him there, it's half an hour from home. And we must have been getting close to selling or getting the house ready for sale. And he was explaining to my middle child that we're going to raise chickens and we're going to butcher them and eat them. And he was explaining the process from start to finish, like he had seen on this TV show. And I was like, wow, you remember that a year later, So he was really excited to move to the farm, and he loves farm life. He's out sleeping out. I mean, it's winter. He's out sleeping outside at the moment in a hammock.
That's awesome.
That's the sort of kid he is. He loves the outdoors. He loves the survival challenges that he sets himself. He loves foraging for food, like more so than me, and I really love foraging for food. So he's really adapted really well, and he's my right-hand man. So when my husband's at work, something's gone wrong, I know I can call Squiz, and he'll come and give me a hand. Pigs escaped, he'll fix the electric fence. The cows have escaped, he'll push them back in, fix the fence. What else has he done? He's helped me reverse a trailer. I can't reverse a trailer. He was able to help me reverse a trailer. And that was a couple of years ago. He's 13 now, and so he was about 11. He helps my husband butcher chickens. He'll help us process. I mean, they all help us process animals. Loves it. And the other two were I was going to say the other two were, I think my middle child was 4. I pulled him out of 4-year-old kinder, so he'd have been 4, and my youngest was 2 when we moved. So they didn't really know anything other than farm life, really.
Yeah. And how do you balance, like, getting them educated? Because I know they're in school. How do you balance them with education, home life? Because let's face it, as homesteaders, our home lives are not, like typical home life of people. Our home life is, you got chores, go take care, it doesn't matter if rain, shine, snow, doesn't matter what's going on. Animals need to be fed, housed, cared for. How do you balance all of that as a mom, especially during for us right now, this is our busy time. This is the preserving time. We're in the harvest season right now. So this is like, countertops are full of produce that needs to go into cans. At least mine is. I don't know about anybody else's, but how do you handle that?
It is a difficult juggle. So we started homeschooling as soon as we moved. So they went to a lovely little Christian school back in Melbourne. Very, child focused on each child is unique. And my oldest said to me, I want to homeschool. And I was like, I don't want to homeschool. I don't know. But he was persistent, and then I really felt God put it on my heart that something that I should be doing. And so there was a shift in me to want to start homeschooling as well. And so I kind of said to him, look, when we moved to the farm, because we knew it was getting close and we'd set a date by when we had to sell by, I said, when we move, we'll homeschool. There's no real, there's schools locally, but they're public schools. And the public school in Victoria is it's not great.
Same
If you want
here.
a child to be innocent and, live in their innocence, just don't send them to a public school or
Yeah.
Australia.
Or here. Yeah. Yeah.
And so homeschooling, it was something that I did just because he wanted to do it, and then I changed and wanted to do it, and then just turned into, well, this is perfect timing because school's filth, and we live far away from everything. So it fell into place. When we first moved, it was more of a juggle because hubby was still working full time. He was commuting back to Melbourne, which is an hour and a half, if not 2 hours, depending on the traffic.
Oh, wow.
I was trying to learn how to homeschool. I still had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So it was probably more difficult at that stage, but we had less animals as well. There weren't as many. We had chickens and sheep, and trying to think what else we had. That's about it. We had our neighbours' cattle here. I think we got pigs as well, so we had pigs. And now we are full homesteaders where we have something of everything, one of every kind. But my kids are older where they can take on responsibilities. So my oldest, he loves chickens and poultry, so he has that as his chore. He'll unlock them in the morning, he'll feed them, lock them up at night. My middle child helps me milk the cow, and my youngest daughter loves to cook, so she's in and around the kitchen as well. So someone's always with me generally, doing something. And are able to do chores independently as well. And so, the mornings are busy. It takes a couple of hours to get everything done. We try and then come in and do a couple of hours of schoolwork. At the moment, we are coming into spring, and so we've taken a little bit of a break. We've kind of taken our summer break now. And then we go out, if we've had a school day, we'll go out and then have a play. The kids will do whatever they want. If they want to go down to the dams and fish, or if they want to build a hut or a billy cart, they'll do that. And then we fit in, we've got a couple of co-ops, homeschooling co-ops that we're a part of, and so we fit that in. We've got one this afternoon for the teenagers. And generally we've got 2 on during the week. So, it fits. You make it fit.
You just make it work. Yeah. And I think that's something I know for myself. This is going to be, even though our oldest right now is 4, this is his first year homeschooling. As a matter of fact, just, well, anyway, I don't want to say that. That's too much information, but he's smart as whip. We'll just put it that way. When it comes to the brain, that one's got it in spades. And both me and my husband are like, oh boy, what do we get ourselves into? So, but I know we've decided that we're homeschooling our children as well. And that's a personal choice that every parent has to make. But right. Yeah, it's a personal choice because there's good and there's bad to either situation. But when you made your choice, now that you've been homeschooling actually for several years, what would you say has been your biggest challenge in homeschooling your children?
I think it was with my oldest. So the one that wanted to be homeschooled, he was used to having a teacher in the classroom. And so he was used to like a classroom situation, and he was used to me just being mum. And so it was that shift of, hey, you're mum, and now you're also my teacher during this time. Sorry, my dog's here if you can hear lots of snorting. That's my dog.
That happens to us all the time. No worries.
It was a shift of accepting that school's different. I'm not going to be standing up at the front of the classroom with a whiteboard. We're sitting down at the kitchen table. I'm giving you a set work. The quicker you do it, the quicker you can go out and play. And so it took many years to get into a rhythm of understanding that it's different to what he's been used to for 2.5 years, because he was at school for 2.5 years, had 2 years of kinder prior to that. yeah, I think that's the other two haven't had those issues because one of them didn't even go to kinder. One of them had a year of kinder, and kinder is just play. 3-year-old kinder is just play. Yeah, so I never had these issues with the other two. But we're also, my oldest and myself are very similar personality-wise. So what frustrates me in him is what frustrates me in myself as well. So I can see it because I see it in myself, see it in him.
Right.
So I think that's what makes that difficult, that relationship difficult, but not in a bad way. Just, you know, there has been
totally
challenges.
Understand. Yeah.
In that. But now, I mean, 5 years later, it's easy. It's easier.
Yeah.
Easier. It's not easy all the time, but it's easier.
Yeah. So
the kids know the rhythm.
So would you say that the transition, in regards to the transition, would you say that it's the ones who never went to school? Is it easier for them because this is all they've
absolutely.
known? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because
my experience,
you have such a unique advantage because you get to see both worlds. Being in, you know, having a child in school and having one or your other two never being in school. Do you see a difference in being homeschooled? Like, has that changed? Has that changed the child? Has it changed you? Has it been a change for the good or for the bad or nothing in between?
I think like my younger two children have a very different personality to my oldest. My oldest, I always knew ever since he was born, I knew that he wouldn't fit into the school system because he's so active, loves being outside, is very hands-on, learns by physically doing it rather than being sit there and being told what to do. So I always knew he was going to struggle. And that was part of the reason I chose the school we went to, because I knew that it would be a great fit for him. But if I just sent him to any old school, I looked at another, you know, lovely Christian school down the road from us, much closer to home, had a great reputation, very academic. And I went there and I was like, oh, he's not going to fit in here. Like my other two kids might be fine, but this particular child is going to hate it. So I think it really depends on this, you know, what school I would have sent him to. I don't know what the schools out here are like, if they're hands-on focused or not. But he wouldn't have coped, I don't think, in just the regular school system. As for me, I definitely would never send my kids back to school unless they were adamant that that's what they wanted to do. We are homeschoolers for life. I think they would want to be homeschoolers for life too. They have a great life, great lifestyle. You know, if we finish our schoolwork early, like a couple of weeks ago, we went down fishing in the afternoon just to the local river. And, you know, after a couple of hours, they saw the school bus go past and they're like, oh, they're just leaving school now. And I'm like, yep, they're just leaving school now. Aren't you guys lucky? You know, you finished your schoolwork for the day. We've done our chores. We're here fishing.
Yeah. And you got the same information they did. Probably even better.
Why would you want to go to school?
Yeah.
When you've got that.
Exactly. He could be here fishing. Yeah. He could be outside. Yeah. I always say to my kids, you can be barefoot and outside. That's the best thing for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, Nathalie, this has been just a joy talking to you. And hopefully this gives just a little bit of push for our listeners. If you're thinking about homeschooling your children, hopefully this helps to encourage you. It's okay. You can do it.
Yeah.
You can totally do it and homestead all at the same time, because there are plenty of people who are doing it. Look at Nathalie. She's doing it. She's living the dream. So, Nathalie, I'm going to close out this interview here by asking you a question. And that is basically, tell us a little bit more about your business. How do you support yourself? If our listeners want to go follow you, want to learn more, especially when it comes to permaculture, because we didn't even, we could spend hours on that subject because you are really good at that. Dahlias, that just, anyway, there's an inside thing there. Sorry, listeners. But anyway, dahlias. But if the listener could just, if they want to follow you and want to learn more about you, could you please tell us just a little bit more?
Sure. So I'm probably mostly active on Instagram for social media, and that is at Living the Dream Permaculture _ between each word. I don't YouTube much anymore. It's something I want to come back to, but my life got really busy.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that, especially in that first year, I was up at the crack of dawn, which I love to do, but I was going and going and going, and I was working till about 10 o'clock at night to get a video up. And I was documenting our journey daily, which is a lot of work for any content creator. And that's how much work goes into that. And so I think I just got a bit burnt out, but I hope to get back onto YouTube in the next few years, maybe in a year or so. We'll see how we go. And through Instagram, I do teach a lot. A lot of my content is free. Everything on Instagram is free. And I talk about homesteading, homeschooling, homemaking, permaculture. And then a few times a year, I offer a course. It's called the Self-Sufficiency Crash Course. And basically, it is a 6-week crash course into how I live my life, from starting a garden to raising from seed, permaculture design, medicinal herbs, what else? Preserving, foraging, buttering, preserving, all of that kind of is condensed. It's I say condensed, but it's quite an intensive course.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, after that a few times a year, and you can change that to your climate and your time and your zone. I speak about my zone, but I also offer suggestions for other growing areas as well. So that's basically it. I'm not active on Facebook anymore. I gave up Facebook in 2020 because it was too depressing.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about all the ways you can reach me. There, I do have a website, which is livingthedream.com.
Great. And we will be sure to put all of those links in the show notes below here for this particular show. So that way you can always reference and get in contact with Nathalie and follow her over on Insta. So
thank you.
You are so welcome. Well, Nathalie, we are super duper happy and excited to have you here. That's it from all of us here, from our homesteads to wherever you are in the world. Happy homesteading and stay safe out there.